Hey guys, tonight we begin with a gentle descent into hell. Not the fire and brimstone kind, the everyday soul-chipping, Medan pottage kind. The kind where you wake up surrounded by fleas, foot fungus, and a goat with an attitude problem. This isn't a fantasy story. No dragons, no quests, just one day, one honest, miserable day in medieval Europe. And, spoiler alert, you're not the chosen one. Before we dig in, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy slow-burn historical suffering, narrated with a wink and a wince. And drop a comment below. Where are you watching from, and what century is it over there? Now dim the lights, maybe grab a scratchy wool blanket, and prepare yourself, because the year is 1350, the plague is recent, the food is questionable, and your alarm clock is a church bell rung by someone who hasn't brushed their teeth ever. Congratulations, you're alive. Unfortunately, your eyes flutter open. It's still dark out, because medieval morning doesn't wait for sunlight. Your body aches, every part of it, like you've just finished a bar fight you don't remember agreeing to. Which, in this time, you might have. You're sleeping on what barely passes for a mattress, a burlap sack stuffed with old straw, mouse droppings, and the shattered dreams of better bedding. It smells like barn. It was a barn 3 months ago. Now it's your bed. Also, the bed of 2 siblings, 1 chicken, and possibly a rat named Jeffrey. Everyone's gotten used to Jeffrey. He pays no rent, but he doesn't bite much. There's no pillow, no sheets, no thread count. Your blanket is a coarse wool rectangle that hasn't seen clean water since the last harvest. It's heavy, not because it's warm, because it's full of sweat, dust, and unspeakable night crust. You roll it off, and your nose instantly picks up on the medieval musk of the room. Damp wood, goat fart, human funk, and turnip. The roof leaks. The floor is worse. You swing your legs off the edge of your bed and immediately step into a cold puddle. Might be rainwater, might be chicken urine, might be both. Either way, your bare feet are now officially part of the medieval ecosystem. Welcome to the average peasant household. 1 room, dirt floor, drafty walls, and an open-plan design that was never meant to be trendy. Everyone sleeps, eats, coughs, snores, and yes, relieves themselves in the same space. There are no walls, no privacy, no such thing as alone time, and it's not even breakfast yet. You've managed to stand up without throwing out your back. That's a win. Your toes are frozen, your breath fogs the air, and your knees feel like someone's grinding gravel inside them. But you're vertical. That counts for something. Now it's time to freshen up, a phrase that, in the 14th century, means something very different. You stretch, which triggers a series of cracks and pops that would concern any modern doctor. But there are no doctors here, not really. Just the old woman down the lane with a jar of leeches and an herbal tea that might also be paint thinner. You shuffle across the hut, trying to avoid the worst patches of wet earth on the floor, or worse, crusty ones. There's a fresh smell in the air. It's not bread, it's not herbs, it's something steaming near the corner. You don't ask questions. That's survival. Let's talk bathrooms. You need to relieve yourself badly. Unfortunately, you live in a time where the idea of an indoor toilet is not just futuristic, it's laughably impossible. If you're lucky, you've got a designated privy, which is medieval for a wooden hole that may or may not collapse under you. If you're not lucky, you head outside to the bucket. It's behind the house, in a crude wooden box with no roof and no dignity. You hold your breath, squat, and hope the wind is blowing the other direction. There's no seat, no paper, no dignity, just the biting cold of dawn on your backside and the crushing knowledge that you'll have to carry this bucket later and dump it into the open ditch that runs along the village path. And yes, you're expected to yell "Gardiloo" before dumping it. Nobody moves fast enough. Nobody ever learns. Hand washing. Who's that? To clean up, you wipe your hands on your tunic. No soap, no towel. The tunic's already stained from weeks of hard labor. But hey, what's one more smear? Toilet paper doesn't exist. Most people use moss, straw, rags, or nothing at all. And shaking hands with strangers, not a thing. Now you know why. The idea of sanitation is reserved for monks and miracle workers, and even they smell like smoked fish and regret. Time for the most depressing meal of the day. You shuffle back inside to your family huddled around a tiny fire. There's a pot suspended above the flames, if you're lucky, and inside, a sludgy brown stew bubbles faintly. This is pottage. You will eat this for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. It's made of grains, roots, cabbage, turnips, maybe a dried pea or two if you're high-rolling. It's been simmering for a week. New ingredients just get tossed in. It's not food. It's history with a ladle. So, you're seated, or more likely, squatting, next to the fire, cradling a wooden bowl of pottage. It smells like root vegetables, boiled in sadness. It tastes like grainy wallpaper paste, and it has the texture of something you'd find at the bottom of a rain barrel in late autumn. Everyone's eating it. No one's talking, because no one wants to say the truth out loud. You've eaten this exact bowl of pottage for the past 11 days. It never ends. You don't finish it, you just add to it. This isn't a meal. This is a ritual of survival. And you still have one more item on the menu. Let's talk about the bread. A chunk of bread is passed your way. You take it with reverence, not because it's delicious, but because it might break your tooth if you don't chew it right. It's dark, coarse, heavy, made from rye or barley, and often mixed with creative ingredients like ground-up acorns, sawdust, or mashed beans. Wheat, that's fantasy food, reserved for lords, priests, and whatever heavenly being hasn't had to work a field in this century. This loaf is less baked good and more defensive weapon. You don't bite into it. You gnaw on it until it gives up. It might be stale. It might be moldy. You eat it anyway, because hunger has made you stop asking questions. And if you think there's butter, or cheese, or jam, adorable. The butter went bad last week, and the only cheese is probably still walking around outside in goat form. Thirsty, get ready to drink like a blacksmith. You reach for something to wash it all down, and no, it's not water, because in 1350, water is suspect. Your local stream looks fresh until you remember that upstream someone dumped last night's bucket, or a dead pig, or both. So instead, you drink small beer, yes beer, for breakfast, not strong beer. It's weak, very low in alcohol, just enough to kill off bacteria. And yes, kids drink it too, because it's safer than water, and because hydration is not a privilege, it's a gamble. There's no oat milk, no coffee, no tea, just barely bubbled medieval grog, served lukewarm, in a chipped wooden mug that's been used for soup, stew, and possibly squirrel storage. Congratulations, you've eaten, you feel nothing. You're not satisfied, you're not energized, you're just slightly less hungry than you were 15 minutes ago. Breakfast in medieval Europe isn't about enjoyment, it's about endurance. about not passing out in the next 3 hours while hauling firewood or chasing geese or being yelled at by someone with 3 teeth and a stick. So you've eaten, sort of. You've had your daily ladle of stewed disappointment and chewed your way through a crusty, multi-purpose doorstop pretending to be bread. You've chased it with a mug of medieval breakfast beer, a lukewarm, low-alcohol broth of hope and yeast. Now it's time for what we might call a morning routine, except here, your routine is survive the toilet, eat the pottage, and don't die from tooth rot. Welcome to medieval personal hygiene, an adventure in decay. Toothbrush. Never heard of her. Your teeth hurt, always. There's a dull throb in your gums that you've learned to ignore, and the back left molar feels loose, but you tell yourself that's normal. It isn't. There's no toothbrush, no toothpaste, no floss, no dental plan, no understanding that bacteria exists. The best anyone does is chew the end of a twig until it frays, and then rub it over their teeth in a vague, scrubbing motion that does almost nothing. Maybe rinse with wine or vinegar. Maybe, if you're rich, you can afford imported sugar, which means your teeth rot even faster. If you're poor, it just takes a little longer. Either way, by your mid-20s, you've got cavities, abscesses, and at least one tooth that's more whole than tooth, and the cure. Dentistry. By pain, for pain. The man who cuts your hair also pulls your teeth. He's called a barber surgeon, and he has exactly 3 tools: a dull iron hook, a bowl, and a prayer. No anesthesia, no sterilization, no apologies. When the pain becomes unbearable, you sit in a wooden chair, grip the armrests, and let him yank the offending tooth while a neighbor holds your legs down. There's blood, there's screaming, sometimes fainting, and if infection sets in, you die from a toothache. That's not hyperbole. A simple dental infection, untreated, can become sepsis and take you out faster than a sword ever could. Breath that ends conversations. Let's talk about halitosis. Everyone has it. Everyone knows it. No one comments on it. Your breath smells like fermented onions, sour grain, and sadness. You haven't brushed in years. You eat with your hands. You rarely wash your mouth. And when you do, you're using ditch water. But don't worry, everyone else smells just as bad. Bad breath is not a personal failing. It's just part of the atmosphere. Cosmetic dentistry. Cute. Try surviving. Your teeth aren't straight. They're not white. They're not even fully present anymore. They're chipped, cracked, ground down from years of hard chewing and stress. You've been gnawing on stone-hard bread since childhood. Your enamel surrendered long ago, and smiling, a luxury, a liability. Most peasants don't flash teeth unless it's absolutely necessary, which, fortunately, it never is. You've eaten, you've survived the toilet. Your breath could melt an anvil. Now it's time to get dressed. Not that it will help, because in medieval Europe, fashion means exactly one thing. You own one outfit, and you wear it until it falls off your body or fuses with your skin, whichever comes first. Your entire closet is already on you. Your clothing, and we use that term loosely, consists of a coarse wool tunic, stiff with grime and weather, possibly a linen shift underneath, if you're lucky. And if you're a woman, maybe a second layer of scratchy wool over the first, just to trap the suffering. There are no choices, no colors, no seasonal wardrobes, just one garment, worn every single day. Sun, rain, snow, you wear it. It absorbs everything: sweat, smoke, rainwater, goat, slobber, and despair. And no, you can't wash it. Not unless you feel like hauling buckets from the river, boiling water over a fire for an hour, scrubbing with ashes, and then praying the tunic doesn't disintegrate like a cursed scroll, so you wear it forever. Underwear, optional. Hygiene, a myth. If you're wearing anything under the tunic, it's probably a rough linen shift, which may be less itchy than wool, but offers exactly the same emotional comfort as a wet sack. More likely, you're going commando, which means it's your body against medieval fabric in a cage match that never ends. And wool doesn't forgive. It scratches, it rubs, it holds moisture like a grudge. You've got rashes in places you can't scratch in public and in private. You scratch until you bleed, then pretend it's nothing, because it is nothing compared to what's next. Shoes that don't count. If you own shoes, if they're thin strips of leather, loosely stitched together with twine and hope, they have no soles, no structure, no arch support. They protect you from absolutely nothing. They absorb mud like a sponge. They split open at the first sign of a stone. They chafe your ankles into oblivion. So most people don't bother. You go barefoot, through mud, through ice, through dung, through that mystery puddle behind the stable that probably wasn't rainwater. Your feet are black with grime, cracked from the cold, and shaped like whatever they've been stepping on, and they itch all the time. Let's talk about the bugs. Your clothes, inhabited by lice, fleas, mites, possibly something unnamed that science hasn't rediscovered yet. They live in your seams. They bite your armpits. They crawl across your scalp while you sleep. You've stopped trying to get rid of them. Now it's just a question of who's winning. Everyone has them. Nobles, monks, children. You scratch while talking. You scratch in your sleep. You scratch while praying. It's part of the rhythm of life. No one even notices. You're dressed, or rather, you're wearing the same wet sack of burlap sadness that's been clinging to your body since last spring. Your feet are bare or blistered, inside shredded leather pouches. You itch, you ache, and your breath smells like moldy radish stew. Congratulations, it's time to start your workday. No coffee, no commute, no emails, just back-breaking labor from dawn to dusk, with nothing to look forward to but the occasional beat. Let's get into it. The workplace, a field, a barn, a grave waiting room. If you're a peasant, and let's be honest, 90% of people are, your job is simple: survive. You work on land that belongs to your local lord. He's never spoken to you. He probably doesn't know your name, but you owe him everything. And by everything, we mean most of your food, half your time, and your eternal gratitude for letting you barely exist. Your tools are medieval masterpieces, a splintery wooden hoe, a rusted sickle, and whatever bones in your body haven't given out yet. There's no break room, no lunch hour, no paid time off. You start at first light. You stop when the sun disappears, or your body does. What does work look like? Pain. It looks like pain. You're up to your ankles in cold mud, planting barley in rows that stretch on like the world's most boring curse. You're bent at the waist, pulling weeds until your lower back feels like a snapped bowstring. You carry water in leaky wooden buckets from a stream that smells like goats had a bachelor party upstream. There's no irrigation. You pray for rain, but not too much, or the crops drown. Not too little, or they die. Every season is a gamble. Every year, a coin toss between barely enough to live and starving through winter. And no one cares if you're tired. Women work twice as hard for half the credit. If you're a woman, your day is somehow even worse. Not only are you in the fields working like a mule, but you're also expected to tend to children, cook meals, spin wool, feed livestock, clean, with what? Who knows? And keep your husband's lice problem from spreading to your side of the bed. And you're still expected to smile when the priest shows up and comments on how pale you look. Children, welcome to the workforce. Kids don't go to school, they go to work. By age 5, you're expected to carry firewood, shoo birds off the crops, sweep floors, and not complain. Toys. You have a stick, a favorite rock, if you're spoiled. Maybe a rag doll filled with hay and existential dread. Your childhood is just unpaid training for a life of labor. You've got it. Time to press on through medieval misery. It's mid-morning now. You've been working for hours, hauling water, digging in frozen dirt, chasing off crows, and trying not to cough in a way that sounds too sick, lest someone assumes you're on your deathbed and digs the hole early. But don't worry, your day off is coming. It's Sunday, unless, of course, the crops are behind schedule. Someone died and you have to help bury them. The livestock got loose. There's a religious feast to cook for. Or you're just too poor to afford not working. So, yes, Sunday exists, but rest is relative, and guilt is mandatory. Sabbath or not, God's still watching. You don't get to sleep in on Sunday. You get up, same time as always, and you go to Mass. Why? Because the priest says you have to. Because if you don't, your neighbor Agnes will notice. And Agnes is the medieval version of a ring camera with legs and no chill. You show up to church exhausted, dirty, and barely able to stay upright, but you bow, kneel, pray, and pretend not to nod off while the priest mumbles in Latin. Do you understand Latin? Of course not. That's not for you. That's for monks, scholars, and anyone else not hauling turnips for a living. But if the priest says the rain stopped because of extra prayer this week, you nod. Because questioning doctrine is a great way to get flogged, or burned, or both. What if you get sick? You don't. You're cursed. You've got a fever. Your hands are shaking. You're sweating like you've just wrestled a pig and lost. What now? First, your family assumes it's your fault. You didn't pray hard enough. You skipped church once last month. You walked by that woman who owns a suspicious number of cats. Clearly, this is punishment. There are no doctors, not like we know them. There's the village wise woman who gives you a poultice made of mashed garlic and river mud. Or a barber surgeon who offers leeches, a prayer, and an unwashed knife. If you get better, God saved you. If you get worse, you weren't worthy. Retirement, not a thing. You work until you die. That's the plan. There's no pension, no savings, no golden years. If you're too weak to work, you beg. If no one takes pity, you starve. Maybe, if you're very lucky, your children take you in. They feed you crusts and let you sleep near the fire, but only if they're not already starving themselves. If you're nobility, you retire to a manor and complain about the smell of peasants. But if you're listening to this, you're not nobility. You're bone-tired, bug-bitten, and about one bad cough away from an early grave. Let's talk about the weather. Not because it's nice. It isn't. But because in medieval Europe, it's one of your biggest enemies. You can survive the pottage. You can survive the fleas. But the weather is personal. In the 14th century, there is no insulation, no central heating, no cooling, and no way to check the forecast. You don't know what the day will bring. You just step outside and let the sky decide what kind of torture you're in for. Spoiler, It's never the kind where you feel just right. Winter. The long, slow freeze of regret. Let's begin with winter. It's not a cozy snow globe kind of winter. There's no hot chocolate, no fireplace crackling romantically. There's just cold, crushing, biting, marrow-deep cold that seeps into your bones and stays there. Your hut has no insulation. The gaps in the wooden walls let the wind scream straight through. You plug them with straw and old rags, but the breeze laughs and continues undeterred. Your windows, you don't have any, just tiny holes, barely covered with cloth or animal bladder stretched like parchment. Your bed is damp, your clothes are damp, you are damp. Everything you own is perpetually moist, not with comfort, but with the type of cold that makes your teeth chatter even in your sleep. Firewood, rare, expensive, and gathering it from the forest can get you fined, whipped, or executed if it belongs to the Lord's land. So you shiver in your one wool tunic and try to tell your toes they still exist. Frostbite, it's called bad luck. Hypothermia, it's called weakness. You get sick in winter, and there's a good chance you don't make it to spring. Summer, hell, but with more flies. Now let's jump to summer, a time of warmth and joy in modern life. But here, it's a slow bake inside a dirt-walled oven. Your home, which was an icebox a few months ago, is now a smoke-trapping sweat lodge. The air doesn't move. The fire in the hearth makes everything worse. But you need it to cook the one pot of food you'll eat all day. There's no breeze, no ice, no cold drinks. Your sweat has nowhere to go because you're wearing multiple layers, not for fashion, but for modesty and insect defense. You can't strip down. That's scandalous and dangerous. You're sunburnt. Your thighs are chafing. Your feet are blistered. And your armpits smell like someone tried to pickle onions in a boot. Deodorant, sunscreen, in your dreams. Body odor is universal. People have given up on avoiding it. You smell like boiled cabbage and barn dust. So does everyone else. Sunscreen. Nope. You tie a scrap of linen over your head like a medieval scarecrow and hope the sun doesn't cook your face off. Spoiler, it does. Mosquitoes everywhere. Flies endless. And they're all drawn to the sweat, the filth, and the rotting something in the corner that nobody wants to investigate. You're overheated. Your tunic is glued to your back, and the sun is turning your scalp into a boiled onion. You're thirsty, desperately thirsty. So what do you reach for? If you were lucky enough to be born centuries later, the answer would be simple: a glass of water. But it's 1350, and in this time, water isn't your friend. It's a loaded question with a splash of death. Looks clean. Think again. You find a stream. It looks pristine, bubbling, clear, maybe even picturesque. The kind of thing that would get labeled eco-friendly today. But don't be fooled. Upstream, someone likely dumped their chamber pot in it, or washed their clothes, or bathed their livestock, or, yes, dumped a body, human or otherwise. You're not just drinking water. You're drinking everything your neighbors flushed, spilled, or didn't bother burying. Parasites, the invisible killers. Water in medieval Europe is teeming with invisible horrors. Parasites, bacteria, organisms, science won't name for centuries. You sip from the stream, and your fate is sealed. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon you'll wake up with cramps, vomiting, and the urgent need to sprint to the field behind your house with a bucket, again and again and again. It's called dysentery. It's everywhere, and it kills quietly, painfully, and with an unpleasant amount of leakage. Why beer saves lives. This is why people, children included, Drink beer, not craft IPAs or double-hopped pale ales. Just weak, cloudy, barely alcoholic small beer, brewed mostly because the boiling process killed off bacteria. It's not tasty, it's not refreshing, but it's the closest thing to safe hydration you've got. Even children drink it, all day, every day. No one's getting tipsy. They're just trying not to die from a sip of river. And the rich, they drink wine, or imported spring water, sealed in barrels, the 14th century equivalent of bottled water, only 10 times more expensive, and sometimes flavored with regret. Bathing, rare, risky, and weirdly political. Now let's say, out of pure desperation, you want to bathe. There's no bathroom, no shower, no tub. You'd need to haul water from the well, boil it over a fire, pour it into a leaky wooden barrel, and sit in it before it cools to the temperature of regret. All of this assumes no one else used the bath before you. Spoiler, they did. And public bathhouses, they exist, barely, but many were shut down by the church because they were considered morally risky. Too much skin, too much gossip, too much other stuff. Bathing is not encouraged. It's often considered unhealthy. People believed washing too often opened your pores, and therefore your soul, to disease. So you remain filthy. Everyone does, and it's fine, until you're dead. It starts small, a scratchy throat, a runny nose, a little cough you try to hide while hauling buckets of compost across a cabbage field. But this is medieval Europe, and even a tiny cough is a potential death sentence. Wrapped in sneezes. You're getting sick. And there's no urgent care, no pharmacy, no thermometer, just superstition, bleeding, and regret. Let's begin. Diagnosis. God hates you. In 1350, people don't get sick. They get punished. Illness isn't caused by germs or viruses. It's caused by bad air, bad humors, sin, witches, or possibly eating cheese on a Friday. There's no germ theory, no understanding of contagion. If you sneeze too loudly, someone might assume you're cursed, possessed, or simply too close to a leper. You're sick, but no one wants to sit too close, just in case it's contagious. Not that they understand how it's contagious, but still, better safe than plague-ridden. Your doctor is a barber with a knife. Time to seek help. You go to the village healer. But unless you live near a monastery, the best you're getting is a barber surgeon. His qualifications include cutting hair, cutting arms, bleeding people until they faint, occasionally removing teeth, toes, or other inconvenient body parts. His tools are not sterilized. His hands are not clean, and his apron is stained with something that may or may not have been human. He listens to your cough, nods thoughtfully, and then says, "You're full of bad blood. We'll need to let it out." Bleeding. The original misunderstood health trend. The answer to everything. Headaches, fevers, toothaches, sadness is bleeding. They slice open your arm and drain some of your blood into a bowl. If you feel faint, that's a sign it's working. If you pass out, even better. You must have been really sick. You're pale, dizzy, and probably getting an infection from the dull blade. But your barber surgeon insists you'll feel better tomorrow. You won't, but he'll insist again and again until you stop showing up permanently. Other treatment options include terror. Don't like bleeding? No problem. Here are your other options. Leeches, cold, squishy, and medically useful. They're slapped onto your body to suck out the badness. Poultices, a pungent paste of herbs, bread, and goose grease smeared on your chest. Urine analysis. Your doctor sniffs, tastes, and compares your pee to a chart. Yes, really. Fire cupping, hot irons, or amputation. Because when in doubt, remove something. Modern healthcare is a miracle. Medieval healthcare is a roulette wheel with knives. And what about the plague? We'll get there soon. But let's just say, if the town hears you've got boils, black spots, or are coughing blood, your neighbors may board up your house with you inside. Mercy. Not really part of the health plan. Congratulations, you didn't die. Your fever broke, the leeches are off, and you've stopped bleeding from both the cure and the disease. You're alive, still coughing, still weak, but alive. Now what? Back to work. But not just any work, feudal work. Because in medieval Europe, no one really owns anything, especially not you. And everything, your time, your crops, your labor, belongs to someone else. Let's talk about your lord. Meet your overlord. Your lord is a minor noble. He lives in a stone manor or fortified hall at the edge of your village. He's got a fireplace, a real bed, a cloak made from animals you're not even allowed to look at directly. He has soft hands, clean boots, no idea what it's like to poop into a bucket in winter, and yet he owns everything around you. The fields you till his, the woods you gather firewood from, his, the river you fish in, his, the livestock you raise, still his. You're allowed to use them, but in return you owe him taxes, labor, and if he calls, you show up. The tax system, crushing, confusing, and completely unfair. There's no paper trail, no receipts, just vague promises and impossible expectations. You owe a portion of your grain harvest, some of your eggs and chickens, days of free labor during planting and harvest, a pig, maybe, or your daughter's help at the manor. Whatever else he decides, really, refuse. He sends men with sticks, or worse, fines you so heavily you sell your last goat and start skipping meals again. Or he takes your land, which was never really yours to begin with. And no, you can't appeal. There's no HR, just your lord, his steward, and a guy with a tally stick who seems to hate you personally. Justice depends who you are. Did someone steal your turnips? Complain to the bailiff, the lord's man. Did your neighbor's pig trample your barley? Take it up with the reeve, also the lord's man. Did the steward take your firewood? Claim it was his, and fine you for theft. Guess what? Still the lord's man. Justice is less about facts and more about who the Lord likes. Spoiler, it's not you. Your job isn't to win, it's to endure. Don't forget, the church wants a cut, too. Oh, and just when you thought things couldn't get tighter, the church takes 1/10 of everything you own. It's called the tithe. That means 1/10 of your grain, 1/10 of your eggs, 1/10 of your already pitiful income, and a 100% guarantee that questioning it will land you in very hot, heretical water. So between your lord and your priest, you're squeezed dry. But hey, at least heaven is watching, probably, hopefully. It's market day. You don't get many of these, and when you do, you don't stroll there with a wicker basket and a sense of whimsy. You limp there, exhausted, itchy, slightly injured, and carrying everything of value you can spare, which isn't much. You're hoping to trade a few eggs, maybe a wheel of questionable cheese, and some overly enthusiastic cabbages in exchange for salt, a piece of smoked meat, or the fantasy of something sweet. Welcome to the medieval marketplace, a glorious, chaotic stew of smells, shouts, theft, and low-level food poisoning. First, the noise. Before you even see the stalls, you hear the market. It's a chorus of arguments and desperation. 3 pennies for that. You're robbing me blind. Judith, fresh eel, still squirming. Get your leeches here. Cures what ails you or your money back. Don't listen to her bread. My bread only has one kind of mold. There's no regulation, no zoning, no licenses. If you've got a box and a loud voice, you're a vendor. What's for sale? Everything you didn't ask for. The stalls are overflowing with bread that could double as roof shingles. Turnips, again. Fish that smells like last Tuesday. Salted meat that may be questionably sourced. Chickens in baskets, all screaming. Jugs of ale and wine, half watered down. Leather goods, stiff enough to walk on their own. Wooden spoons, hand-woven baskets, and the occasional mystery relic someone insists is a Roman coin. If you're lucky, you might find honey, or apples, or fabric that isn't made of sandpaper. If you're very lucky, you might find something warm, edible, and legal. Money, barter, both, neither. Chaos, currency exists. In theory, there are coins, silver pennies, copper farthings, but most people don't have many, so you trade. 1 dozen eggs equals a small loaf of bread. A chunk of goat cheese equals a piece of soap. A live chicken equals a jug of weak ale, maybe, but barter gets messy. What if your eggs are too small? What if your cheese smells too adventurous? What if the ale seller insists your chicken is looking at him funny? That's when arguments start, which leads to pushing, which leads to fistfights over produce, a time-honored tradition. There's no real security, no cops, just the town reeve, who may or may not be asleep behind a hay cart. So when tensions rise, and they always do, a shove over pricing can quickly become a full-on scuffle, involving turnips used as weapons and someone screaming, "You insulted my goat." Sometimes it ends in blood. Sometimes it ends in laughter. Sometimes it ends in someone being banned from the market for a week, which is basically a death sentence. You're back from the market, tired, empty-handed. You managed to trade 2 eggs and a cabbage for a lump of old cheese and a handful of wilted herbs that smell like defeat. Your feet are blistered. Your back is on strike. Your tunic has a new stain, and you're pretty sure you stepped in something you don't want to investigate. Now it's time to prepare dinner, which sounds generous considering what you have to work with. The kitchen, a smoky hole in the wall. You don't have a kitchen. You have a hearth, an open fire in the middle of your one-room hut. There's no chimney. The smoke either escapes through a hole in the ceiling or just sits there, coating everything with a fine layer of medieval soot. Eyes watering, you crouch by the fire and begin assembling the ingredients. A cup of barley, a turnip that might be older than you, 2 questionable greens, and whatever's left in the pottage pot from this morning or 3 mornings ago. Who's counting? Add water, stir. Try not to cry. The family gathers. The tension rises. Your spouse is tired. Your children are whining. The baby is chewing on a stick. Everyone's hungry, cranky, and pretending not to notice the fact that the stew smells like something died in it, because it probably did last year in the turnip patch. Dinner is less meal and more event. Not a happy one. Just something that happens out of obligation. You ladle out thin portions into wooden bowls. There's no meat, no spice, no flavor, just hot, wet grain flavored with smoke and your own rising existential dread. Still, you eat, because there's nothing else. Table manners, optional. Fighting, guaranteed. There's no table, just the floor. Everyone eats with their hands or a shared wooden spoon. No napkins, no forks. One child drops their bowl, another cries. Your spouse sighs for the 9th time today. Someone elbows someone else for the last crust of bread. Dinner ends not with dessert, but with yelling, not out of anger, out of exhaustion. Everyone's tired, cold, and still hungry. It's not personal, it's just survival. Clean up, you mean leave it there. You don't clean it. There's no running water, and no one has energy left. The pot stays near the fire to congeal into tomorrow's breakfast. The bowls get stacked in a corner and wiped with a rag that hasn't been washed since St. Agnes Day. Your tunic smells like smoke, stew, and sadness. But at least it's yours, kind of. Dinner's done, sort of. No one feels full, but everyone's too tired to keep arguing about how many turnip skins count as a serving. The stew pot is crusted over, the fire's dying down. The children have stopped moving, which either means they've fallen asleep or their blood sugar has hit absolute zero. It's bedtime, which sounds cozy, but isn't. Your bedroom is also the kitchen, living room, and barn. Your home is one room. That's it. No upstairs, no hallway, no door you can shut to get space. It's you, your spouse, your children, possibly your in-laws, a goat, 3 chickens, and a sickly cow that might be pregnant or just really tired, all together, all breathing the same smoke-thick air. There's a hay-stuffed mattress in the corner, but only one. Everyone else sleeps on straw or on each other. It's warm, it's smelly, it's very, very close. Privacy, not a thing. Comfort, a rumor. Space, a luxury only the dead have. Getting ready for bed. You don't change clothes. You're already wearing everything you own. You might take off your belt and shoes, assuming your shoes survived the mud, market, and cow poop gauntlet. You lie down in your corner, hoping the rat you saw earlier has relocated to someone else's hut. There's no pillow, no sheets, just a pile of scratchy wool, old sacks, and the creeping sense that something is moving under the straw, which it is. The lullabies of medieval nightlife. As you close your eyes, the evening soundtrack kicks in. Your neighbor coughing through the wall. Your cow coughing in the corner. Someone's stomach gurgling ominously. A rooster that thinks to AM is dawn. And lice, ticks, and fleas throwing a rave across your skin. You scratch. You roll over. You try not to breathe too deeply, because the room smells like wet wool and boiled sadness. The fire's gone out, and the cold starts creeping in from the edges of the room like a patient assassin. Someone farts. No one reacts. It's just part of the ambience. Sleep is a lottery. If you're lucky, exhaustion wins, and you pass out. If you're unlucky, you lie awake, shivering, worrying about taxes, worrying about rats, worrying about what happens if the cow dies, worrying about what happens if you die. Your back aches, your hip is poking into a rock, and you know you'll be up before dawn again to repeat everything you just did. There are no dreams, only the vague memory of what it was like to not be cold. While you're curled up in a straw nest next to your wheezing cow, someone else, not far from your village, is also turning in for the night. But their bed, feathery, their dinner, hot and seasoned, their tunic, linen, clean, probably embroidered. Let's step briefly into the lives of those who, through luck, birth, or strategic marriage, landed on the upper crust of medieval society. Spoiler, life's better up here. But it's still weird. The noble life, drafty castles, and cold privilege. Your lord, yes, your lord, lives in a stone manor or castle. It's got multiple rooms, windows, a hearth in every chamber, maybe even a tapestry or two to trap heat and impress visitors. But don't envy them too quickly. The castle may be bigger, but it's still freezing. The walls sweat with condensation. Wind shrieks through every crack. The floors are stone, cold, damp. Your lord may own 3 fur-lined cloaks, but he's still sleeping with a dog for warmth. And yes, he has a bed. A real one, carved wood, for posts, curtains, but also bugs, bedbugs, lice, fleas, just fancier ones. He's got more meat, better wine, and fewer backaches, but he also has to manage the estate, entertain visitors, and constantly worry about getting murdered in his sleep by rivals or relatives. Luxury, meat, paranoia, dinner for nobles, more food, more forks, more rules. While you slurped pottage, your lord dined on roasted meats, spiced stews, imported wine, pastries with actual flavor. But don't assume joy. Meals are formal events, long, stiff affairs with rules, ranks, and far too many spoons. Conversation must be polite. Belching is frowned upon, and you eat in courses, not just one bubbling cauldron of whatever. Also, your food might be cold, because you're in the great hall, and the kitchen is across a courtyard. By the time it gets to you, it's lukewarm venison with a side of gout. Monks, poverty, silence, and organized misery. Then there are the monks. You may think, a peaceful life of prayer. But think again. Monks wake up before dawn. They pray, they chant, they copy manuscripts by candlelight, and they follow rules, lots of them. Silence during meals, silence during work, silence for the sake of silence. They wear simple robes, they shave their heads, they eat bland food on purpose. And while they don't pay rent or taxes, they do sleep on hard benches and rise at ungodly hours to sing to a God who, honestly, doesn't respond much. Life is better, but still bleak. Sure, nobles don't till fields, and monks don't beg for bread. But everyone in the medieval world lives in a constant tug-of-war between weather, superstition, disease, and death. No one's exactly thriving. Some are just suffering in nicer shoes. Most of your medieval life is one long, aching to-do list filled with dirt, cold stew, and back pain. But, believe it or not, there are moments of joy, sort of temporary distractions, communal celebrations where people gather, drink, dance, and pretend that life isn't a slow-motion tragedy. Let's talk about the social calendar, weddings, funerals, and feast days. Weddings till death, which is probably soon. A medieval wedding isn't about love, it's about land, dowries, bloodlines, strategic sheep transfers. You don't marry who you want, you marry who you must. Your family arranges it, the church approves it, you go along with it. You might meet your spouse on the wedding day. You might be 14, they might be 30, nobody blinks. But hey, at least there's a party. The village turns out, there's music, there's food, there's ale, lots of ale. People dance, people shout, people pass out in ditches. And then, when it's all over, the bride and groom are paraded to the marital bed, where the local priest might literally watch to ensure the union is consummated. Yes, that was a thing. No, we don't want to talk about it either. Funerals, sad, expensive, and weirdly hopeful. If someone dies, and they often do, the entire community gets involved. First, there's wailing, real, loud, theatrical wailing. Sometimes hired professionals do it if the family can't muster enough noise. The body is washed, wrapped, and displayed. If you're wealthy, you get a wooden coffin. If not, it's a shroud and a hole in the ground. sometimes not even the whole. Then there's the Mass for the dead, Latin prayers, incense, bells, and long silences, while everyone pretends they weren't just arguing over who gets the goat, and afterward, a feast. Because nothing says eternal rest like a communal turnip pie and watered-down ale. Funerals are expensive, emotional, and often hopeful, because everyone is desperate to believe they'll see the departed in heaven, preferably not too soon. Feast days, the medieval version of a weekend. There are no vacations in medieval Europe, no spring break, no 3-day weekends, but there are feast days, dozens of them, tied to saints, seasons, and superstitions. These are the few days you might not work. The church bells ring, people wear their good tunic, there's maybe a parade, maybe a miracle play, there's music, dancing, and, briefly, laughter. But too much fun, that's suspicious. The church often cracks down on dancing, calling it sinful, especially if people enjoy it. Yes, dancing could get you arrested, especially if your footwork made someone feel anything unholy. So, you had a rough day. Maybe your neighbor stole your only chicken. Maybe someone accused you of witchcraft because your cabbage grew too fast. Or maybe, in a moment of pure desperation, you stole a loaf of bread. Now what? Welcome to the medieval justice system, a glorious combination of superstition, spectacle, and absolutely zero presumption of innocence. First, who's in charge here? You'd think justice might be handled by a judge or a constable, but more often it's a mishmash of the Lord's steward, the manorial court, a priest who's more worried about your soul than the facts, and a jury of angry, gossiping neighbors who still remember that time your goat wandered into their garden. This is not a courtroom. It's a dirt patch, a wooden bench, and a man with bad breath holding a stick and yelling order at nobody in particular. What counts as a crime? Everything you can be punished for. Swearing in church, not attending church, stealing, gossiping, looking at someone wrong, owning a dog that barked at the reeve, or simply being suspicious, which is medieval code for someone doesn't like you. There are written laws, but they vary wildly depending on who's in charge, what town you're in, and what mood the local lord is in. Consistency. Never heard of her. The accusation process. Hearsay and hysteria. Someone accuses you. Maybe they saw you pocket that crust of bread. Maybe they think they saw you. Maybe they just don't like the way your nose points. The accusation becomes truth the moment enough people nod in agreement. No evidence, no problem, just enough yelling to drown out your denial. Trial by ordeal. God will judge you. Don't worry, you'll get a chance to prove your innocence with a trial by ordeal. Choose from the following. Trial by hot iron. Carry a red-hot bar of metal. If your burns heal cleanly, God says you're innocent. Trial by water. Get tossed into a pond. If you float, you're guilty. If you sink, you're innocent and possibly dead. Trial by combat. If you're noble, you can fight your accuser to the death, because, clearly, strength equals truth. If you survive any of these, congratulations, you might go free. Or you might still be fined for wasting everyone's time. The punishments? Brutal, public, and creative. Let's say you're found guilty. The punishment menu includes: the stocks get locked in wooden restraints in the village square while people throw things at your face. The pillory, same idea, but more neck pain, fines, crippling ones, even if you're poor. Whipping in public, for everyone's entertainment. Branding, yes, with hot irons. execution, reserved for the big stuff. Or sometimes, the totally random stuff. And the best part, the whole village shows up. They bring snacks. Kids laugh. It's a festival of your pain. The sun has long since vanished. The last ember in the hearth hisses out. You're wrapped in scratchy wool, curled into your corner of the hut, trying to ignore the symphony of snoring, wheezing, and barnyard groaning around you. But you can't sleep, because the night, in medieval times, it doesn't feel like rest. It feels like danger. The darkness isn't just dark, it's alive. There are no electric lights, no street lamps, no glow from your neighbor's TV. Once the sun goes down, the world becomes ink, thick, heavy, and absolute. You can't see your hand in front of your face. You hear everything: the creak of wood, the snap of a twig, a distant howl, a flap of wings against the roof, the scuttle of something with too many legs. And your mind starts filling in blanks with the things you've been told your whole life to fear. Superstition isn't optional, it's survival. You don't understand science, no one does, but you do understand. Evil spirits walk at night. Witches steal your breath while you sleep. Fairies can swap your baby for a changeling. And demons linger near the outhouse, especially around midnight. People say you should never whistle in the dark, never leave shoes upside down, never speak your dreams aloud before dawn. The rules are endless. The fear is constant. You keep your amulet close, a scrap of bone, a carved charm, maybe a saint's tooth if you're lucky. You say a prayer, or three. You toss a pinch of salt near the door, because you can't see what's out there. But you know it's watching. Monsters, myths, and the church's silent approval. The church doesn't encourage belief in monsters, officially, but unofficially. They love that you're afraid. Fear keeps you obedient. Fear keeps you coming to Mass. Fear keeps you from questioning why your taxes are higher than your harvest. So priests speak in half-truths. God protects the faithful. But beware the wolf that walks like a man. The devil takes many forms, even your neighbor. Stay pure or face the night alone. You sleep with one eye open. You listen for the devil's hoofbeats. You wonder if that shadow in the corner just blinked. Dreams aren't comforting, they're warnings. When you finally sleep, it's shallow. Your dreams are strange and symbolic. A river running backward, a crow with your mother's voice, a tower of bread crumbling to ash. You wake in a sweat, convinced it meant something. You asked the village wise woman. She says, "Don't eat turnips tonight," and that's enough to keep you up until dawn. The fire's burning low. The goats are finally quiet. The babies stopped fussing. And somehow, despite the lice and the coughs and the smell of boiled root vegetables, there's a moment, just a flicker of peace. And that's when the stories begin. Because in a world without books, without news, without screens or soundtracks or anything even remotely resembling distraction, stories are your entertainment, your education, your warning system, and your therapy. The old woman in the corner knows things. Every village has someone, usually an older woman, with sharp eyes and sharper memory, who knows all the stories. She tells them in a low voice, slow and steady, like she's passing down spells disguised as bedtime tales. She doesn't need a script. These stories live in her bones. A knight who returned from the dead, a spirit trapped in a well, a girl who turned into a wolf under the full moon, a farmer who broke the Sabbath and woke up cursed. Each one has a lesson, a warning, a flicker of hope or fear. Monsters you've never heard of. Forget vampires and zombies. Medieval folks had their own nightmares. The black shuck, a ghostly dog with eyes like coals. If it looks at you, someone in your family dies. The knuckle-av, a skinless horse demon from the sea that brings disease with every breath. Changelings, sickly fairy impostors left in place of stolen children. Willow, the wisps, flickering lights that lure travelers into swamps or madness. The wild hunt, a ghostly procession of riders sweeping across the sky, seen by the doomed and the damned. These aren't just myths, they're maps, emotional blueprints for surviving a world where everything is uncertain and everything wants to kill you. Why fear was shared, and that was the point. Telling scary stories wasn't just about scaring children. It was about making sense of a brutal world. Why did your cousin vanish after walking into the woods alone? Why did the baby fall ill after a stormy night? Why did the cow stop giving milk after the new woman moved into town? In a world without science, these tales offered cause, they offered meaning, and they helped people mourn without falling into despair. And sometimes, stories were just fun. Not every tale ended in terror. Some were funny, rude, wildly inappropriate. A priest gets tricked by the devil. A farmer outwits a noble. A clever girl fools a king. A drunk gets eaten by a pig and deserves it. These stories made people laugh, gave them something to repeat at the next feast day, something to hold on to when the night got too quiet. In a world ruled by pain, plagues, and powerlessness, you cling to the one thing that promises order in the chaos. Faith. The church isn't just a Sunday stop. It's your calendar, your doctor, your court system, your news source, and your only real shot at eternal peace. Because no matter how terrible life is now, medieval Christianity makes one thing very clear: the afterlife is worse. Your local church, humble but holy, in your village, the church is the only stone building besides the Lord's manor. It's cold, dim, and smells like beeswax, mildew, and incense, but it's sacred. Every villager, even the dirtiest, drunkest one, takes off their hat when they pass it. Inside, there's a wooden altar, a painted crucifix, maybe a statue of Mary, and, if your village is lucky, a relic. Relics are holy items, pieces of saints, or things saints touched, bones, bits of cloth. Once, someone swore a local chapel had St. Jerome's eyebrow hair. It drew pilgrims from 3 towns away. Did anyone verify that? No. Did it matter? Also, no. Saints, your best shot at heavenly favor. You don't pray directly to God most of the time. He's busy. He's terrifying. He floods things. You pray to saints. They're the middle managers of salvation, specializing in very specific problems. Saint Apollonia for toothaches, Saint Roch for plagues, Saint Elmo for sailors and people struck by lightning, Saint Anthony if you've lost literally anything. You light a candle, you whisper your plea, you touch the relic if you're brave. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but doing nothing, that's practically asking for divine punishment. Pilgrimages, medieval road trips with blisters. If you're truly desperate, say your child's sick or your harvest failed, you might make a pilgrimage. That means walking barefoot for days or weeks to reach a holy site. Canterbury, Santiago de Compostela, Rome, or even a local shrine with miracle mud from a saint's footprint. You carry a staff, sleep in barns, eat whatever you're given, and risk robbery, illness, or worse. Why go? Because if you don't, and things get worse, it'll be your fault. spiritually speaking, confession, communion, and constant guilt. Every week, you confess your sins, or as many as you can remember. Skipping Mass, sin. Lustful thoughts, sin. Laughing at the priest's stutter, big sin. Using church candles to light your hearth. Oof, you kneel, you whisper. The priest nods solemnly. You're given penance, prayers, maybe a pilgrimage, maybe fasting, then forgiveness. For now, the church, in medieval times, isn't just a religion. It's the government, it's the school system, it's the boss of kings. It's the final word on what's true and what isn't. And if you question that, you're not just wrong, you're dangerous, you're a heretic. What's a heretic, exactly? A heretic is someone who believes the wrong version of Christianity. The problem is, the definition of wrong changes depending on who's in charge. Maybe you say Jesus was only human. Maybe you think priests shouldn't be rich. Maybe you just refuse to pay the tithe because the priest owns 3 pigs and you're eating moss. That's enough. You're labeled a heretic. And in medieval Europe, heresy equals treason against God. You don't get to debate it. There's no friendly disagreement over tea. There's only punishment, often public, always brutal. The Inquisition, God's bouncers with torches. Starting in the 12th century, the Church forms inquisitions, special task forces to root out heresy. Their methods include interrogation, forced confessions, trials where guilty until proven innocent is considered generous, punishments ranging from whipping to burning. And these aren't secret dungeons. They're spectacles, lessons for everyone else. Think like we say, or else. Torture, righteous pain with a side of theater. The Church didn't invent torture, but boy, did they systematize it. The rack, stretching your body until joints dislocate. The thumbscrew, crushing digits, one twist at a time. The strapetto arms, tied behind your back, then hoisted and dropped, over and over. The heretic's fork, a metal prong between chin and chest, so you literally can't speak. These weren't just punishments. They were meant to purify your soul, to make you confess, to make others fear. Execution, the grand finale. If you're convicted of heresy, especially repeatedly, you're not just jailed, you're executed. Most commonly, burning at the stake. The logic, fire, cleanses. Your soul might be saved, even if your body turns to ash. Crowds gather, children watch, priests murmur prayers, and the fire does its work. You're not just punished, you're made into a warning. And yet, heresy never dies. Despite all the fear, people still whisper secret sermons in barns, translations of the Bible hidden under floorboards, quiet doubts passed from one terrified person to another. Because when the rules become too heavy, some people would rather risk death than carry them. One morning, without warning, your Lord rides through the village square, yelling something about honor, duty, and God's enemies, which means one thing: it's war. You didn't ask for it. You don't even know who the enemy is. But the king's got a feud, the lord's got a contract, and you have a shovel and a bad back. Time to suit up. So, you're a soldier now. Not exactly. You're a levy, a peasant pulled from the fields and thrown into a fight because you owe your lord labor, loyalty, and the occasional death. You're not trained, you're not armed, you don't even know what tactics means, but you're told, God is on our side. The enemy eats babies. If you die, it'll be glorious. That last part is a lie. The gear, a joke with sharp edges. Knights get chainmail, helmets, lances, and war horses. You get a padded tunic, a stick with a nail in it, and maybe, a rusted dagger. Your armor is a wool coat soaked in pig fat to deflect arrows. Spoiler, it doesn't. No one teaches you how to fight. Your only instruction is, hit them first. You're terrified, and it shows. The march, hunger, blisters, and regret. Before the battle comes the march, miles and miles of muddy roads, freezing winds, and suspicious camp food. You sleep in dirt. You eat stale bread and dried peas. You drink ale because the water is deadly. You relieve yourself wherever you're not sleeping, and disease. It spreads faster than rumors. By the time you reach the battlefield, a third of your group has already dropped from fever, foot rot, or a bad bowl of stew. The battle, not what the bards promised. Here's the truth about medieval combat. It's loud, screaming, metal, chaos. It's confusing. No one knows who's winning. It's filthy. Mud, blood, manure. It's short. Most battles end in under an hour. It's brutal. Blunt trauma everywhere. People don't slice each other. They bash each other to death. You swing wildly. You pray. You trip. You fall. You scramble over bodies. If you survive, it's not because you were brave. It's because you were lucky. Victory only for the rich. If your side wins, the lords take land. The knights gain glory, and you get to go home and bury your friends. If your side loses, you might get ransomed. If you're valuable, you might get executed. If you're not, or you might get left behind, bleeding in a ditch, while the birds circle overhead. There are no medals, no monuments, just scars. If you're lucky enough to have a body to bury, you survived. Your hand is cut, your ribs are bruised, your back feels like someone drove an ox cart over it twice, but you're breathing. That alone makes you luckier than half the people you left with. The battle is over, but peace, that's nowhere in sight. Because the medieval world doesn't have trauma counseling, no pensions, no welcome home parades. All it has is returning men who aren't the same, and villages missing the ones who didn't. The walk home, quiet, slow, and full of questions. The trip back is even slower than the march there. You limp beside strangers, men you fought beside but barely know. Some have injuries they'll never recover from. Shattered limbs, infected wounds, missing eyes, no horses, no wagons, just sore feet, empty bellies, and a silent prayer that your village is still standing. And when you finally see the old wooden fence, the smoke from the hearth, and the goat that somehow still hates you, you weep, or laugh, or stare blankly, unsure how to feel. Homecoming, not what you hoped for. You expect relief. Instead, you get awkward silence and tired eyes. Your family's been surviving without you, barely. The harvest was late. Your eldest broke a toe. The cow stopped giving milk. Your youngest doesn't recognize you. Your spouse hugs you with one arm. The other is busy stirring the fire. No one asks what happened. They don't want to know. You don't tell them anyway. You can't find the words. The village cemetery just got bigger. There are new graves, wooden markers, stone piles, names scrawled in charcoal that's already fading. Some are your friends, some are your cousins, some are just people you passed on the way to church. Their cause of death, the war, the cough, God's will. Everyone moves on, slowly, mechanically, because if they don't, everything falls apart. There are still fields to till, goats to milk, bread to bake. Grief can wait, the walking wounded. Some men return with missing limbs, some return with rage. Some sit outside the church for hours, mumbling things that don't make sense. Others drink. a lot. The term shell shock doesn't exist yet, but its symptoms do. You get labeled touched, or moody, or unwell, and that's the end of it. No one knows what to do. So they let you suffer in silence. But life keeps going. Children are born. Crops get planted. Someone builds a new shed. The sun rises, whether you want it to or not. You're home. You're not the same, but you're still here. And in the medieval world, that's about as good as it gets. It starts with a cough, just a cough, from the merchant's son to huts over. No one thinks much of it. He was always frail, always wheezing, probably just a chill. But by morning, he's not coughing anymore. He's silent. His skin's gone dark. His eyes are glassy, and there's a lump on his neck the size of an egg. By sundown, the priest is ringing the bell, and by the next morning, 5 more are sick. You don't know it yet, but the plague has arrived. The Black Death, the Reaper's favorite tool. The year might be 1348, or 1361, or 1400. The plague didn't just come once. It came in waves, sweeping through Europe again and again. And it didn't whisper, it screamed. Historians now know it was mostly the bubonic plague, carried by fleas on rats. But you don't know that. All you know is, people swell up with painful black lumps. They vomit and bleed. They die within days, sometimes hours, and the smell is indescribable. It doesn't matter if you're noble or poor, priest or peasant, man, woman, or child. No one is spared. Daily life becomes daily death. The market shuts down. The roads empty. The church bells ring all day, tolling for the newly dead. You're told not to leave your house, not to breathe near others, not to anger God. But it doesn't help, because the sickness comes anyway. You see, carts piled with bodies, graves dug so fast, names are forgotten. Families sealing sick loved ones inside their homes and walking away. The rules of life change overnight. Medicine, not really. The local healer tells you to rub onions on your sores, bathe in vinegar, place a live chicken on the swelling to draw out the poison, pray a lot. None of it works. Some towns burn aromatic herbs to cleanse the air. Others massacre stray dogs. Some blame foreigners, beggars, or witches. And a few claim it's punishment from God for sins you didn't even know existed. Flight, fear, and final prayers. If you're wealthy, you flee to the countryside. If you're poor, you hide or accept your fate. Some flagellants march through towns, whipping themselves bloody to earn God's mercy. Others throw wild parties, convinced they'll die by dawn anyway. You just try to stay alive. Keep breathing. Avoid coughs. Burn everything you touch. Sleep with a rosary in your hand. And if you hear someone sneeze nearby, you run fast, because everyone knows a sneeze could be a death sentence. The plague came, it ravaged, and now it's gone. Not everywhere, not completely. But in your village, the bell has stopped ringing. The smell has faded. The carts have stopped rolling past with covered bodies. But that doesn't mean things are back to normal. Because now you notice what's missing. The dead don't take up much space, but their absence does. Half the homes are abandoned. The doors hang open. Chickens wander inside like they own the place. No one bothers to close shutters anymore. You see empty cradles, untouched looms, tools lying in fields that no one's come back to claim. You walk past a neighbor's house and realize you don't remember their voices anymore, just their faces, barely. The streets are too wide, the air too still, and the silence. It presses on your chest like wet wool. Grief isn't loud, it's tired. No one cries anymore. They've run out of tears. You thought surviving would bring relief, joy, a sense of victory, but instead, it's just guilt. Why you? Why not them? Why did the fever pass you by and take the baby next door? You don't say it aloud. You just work harder, sleep less, stare at the fire longer. Everyone does. Work doubles, but wages might too. With fewer people, suddenly there's too much to do and not enough hands to do it. The noble wants his crops in the ground. He'll have to pay more. The blacksmith needs help. He better offer bread with that coin. You're still a peasant, but now you're a rare peasant. Labor is valuable. Lords hate that. Laws are passed trying to freeze wages, prevent workers from demanding better. It doesn't work. For the first time in forever, a peasant can say no, and someone might actually listen. The church tries to explain it all. The priests say it was God's punishment. Then they say it was a test. Then they stop saying anything. Because the plague didn't just kill people, it killed trust. Why did the good die first? Why did priests fall just like sinners? Why did prayers go unanswered? Some people cling harder to faith, build more churches, wear more relics. Others drift away, quietly but steadily. Not to heresy, just to uncertainty. And in the medieval world, that's enough to change everything. Something is different now. No one says it outright, but it's there. In the way people talk, walk, look at the sky. Life has always been hard, but now there's a crack in the idea that the world is unchanging, that everything must be the way it always was, because something happened that wasn't supposed to, and you survived it. That changes you. The plague didn't end the Middle Ages, but it cracked them wide open. It was like a massive reset button. And while the lords and bishops tried to pretend nothing had changed, the truth was impossible to ignore, because people didn't just die. Ideas died, old certainties died, and in the empty spaces left behind, something new started to grow. Work looks different now. Before the plague, a peasant's worth was a joke. After, it's a bargaining chip. With so many dead, fields are overgrown, mills are quiet, tools rust in barns. But the survivors, they're needed badly. Labor shortages mean wages rise, lords compete to keep workers. Villagers start moving to towns in search of better deals. And suddenly, the idea of just doing what your father did doesn't feel so sacred anymore. A shepherd becomes a merchant. A plowboy becomes a mason. Mobility, limited, fragile, becomes possible. Towns grow, slowly but steadily. Towns that were once sleepy trading posts begin to swell. Why? Survivors seek work. Orphans seek relatives. The curious seek opportunity. Markets hum again. Inns reopen. Guilds accept new apprentices. It's not the Renaissance yet, but it's coming. The seeds are here, planted by disaster. And in this fertile, wounded soil, ambition begins to bloom. Education creeps in through the cracks. With priests dead and clerks missing, towns and churches scramble to find anyone who can read, so they start teaching. Not everyone, not even most, but some. Boys from modest families, younger sons of merchants, the occasional bright orphan taken in by a monastery. And with literacy comes questions. With questions come books. With books come ideas. The scriptorium becomes a slow, deliberate revolution machine. Women, still oppressed, but not invisible. Women, always central to daily survival, suddenly find themselves filling roles left empty by death. Some take over family farms, run taverns, lead healing practices. Most go right back to being overlooked, but not all. Some find tiny cracks in the social wall, and a few pry them open, just enough to breathe. Faith wavers, but doesn't disappear. Church attendance drops, but not everywhere. Pilgrimages surge, but often out of fear, not devotion. Monasteries struggle, while mystics and personal devotion grow. People still believe, but now they believe differently. Less in the power of priests, more in their own prayers. And a whisper begins, not loud enough to be dangerous, but clear enough to echo. What if the church doesn't have all the answers? Most people think of the Middle Ages as mud and misery, and for the most part, they're right. But beneath the toil, the war, and the plague, the world wasn't standing still. And by the late Middle Ages, the whisper was turning into a murmur. Books begin to multiply, slowly but powerfully. For centuries, books were rare, hand-copied treasures, held behind monastery walls, chained to desks. Written in Latin only, scholars could read. But now, towns are hiring scribes. Merchants are paying for ledgers. Universities are popping up. And in 1440, the printing press is coming. Suddenly, knowledge isn't just for monks and nobles. The world is about to get loud with ideas. Art stops being just for God. Earlier medieval art, faces gain emotion, landscapes bloom, shadows fall naturally. Perspective is born, realism creeps in, and more importantly, art isn't only religious anymore. Merchants commission portraits, towns decorate halls with civic pride. Artists sign their work, a quiet declaration of self in a world that rarely acknowledged individuality. Invention sparks in unexpected places. Medieval people weren't as backward as modern minds assume. By the later centuries, you had mechanical clocks marking time with gears, not bells, spinning wheels, eyeglasses, windmills, chimneys, finely warm, less smoky houses, and even rudimentary spectacles. Necessity forced innovation. Labor shortages demanded efficiency. Trade routes carried not just silk, but knowledge. The world wasn't just rebuilding, it was rethinking. Philosophy and curiosity stir. Scholars start questioning Aristotle. Doctors abandon leeches and begin recording real symptoms. The stars, once seen only as God's decoration, are mapped with serious intention. And a few thinkers start asking the most dangerous question of all. What if we don't know everything? That question will launch the Renaissance. But here, in this medieval moment, it's still a whisper. But most people don't notice yet. Your average peasant isn't reading philosophy. They're still planting rye, shoveling muck, and praying the winter isn't too long, but they hear new songs. They see brighter cloth in the market. They meet travelers with strange ideas. Change is in the air. It smells like ink, oil, paint, and distant thunder. The age isn't over, it's evolving. Forget everything you know about childhood. There are no playrooms, no birthday parties, no "I'll grow up to be" dreams. In medieval times, if you can walk, you can work. If you can carry a bucket, you're useful. And if you live past 5, you're lucky. Childhood isn't a magical time, it's a test of survival. Infancy, the most dangerous years. Infants are swaddled tightly, often for months, to keep their limbs straight and to stop them from moving too much. It's not uncommon for babies to sleep in drawers, be rocked in slings hanging from beams, be left near fires. Milk comes from mothers, or if they die, from goats, wet nurses, or whatever can be mashed into a pulp. And disease, oh, it loves children. Fevers, infections, poor sanitation. Up to half of all children never make it to age 5. So yes, your first years are brutal. Age 5 to 10. Welcome to the workforce. If you've survived, congratulations. It's time to start pulling your weight. Your tasks might include fetching water, watching geese, gathering firewood, stirring porridge, turning the spit at the fire, shooing rats from the grain. No school unless you're very lucky or rich. No playtime unless you sneak it between chores. You're not coddled. You're not asked if you're tired. You're just told, go help your mother. And you do. If you're a noble child or bound for the church, you might learn Latin, Psalms, basic arithmetic. If you're a merchant's child, maybe reading and writing in the local tongue. For most, you learn from watching, from doing, from failing. Your classroom is the field, the forge, the loom, your teachers, parents, masters, older siblings who may or may not like you. Play still happens in bursts. Even in hard times, kids find ways to be kids. They play with homemade dolls, spinning tops, sticks, bones, hoops, pebbles, animal bladders, inflated like balloons. They race, they wrestle, they mimic adults, they get filthy. There are no toy stores, but laughter still happens. Even if it's between hauling buckets and dodging angry geese. Adolescence, blink and you'll miss it. By 12 or 13, you're apprenticing, working the fields full-time, or, especially if you're a girl, being married off. Boys learn trades or take up arms. Girls learn to manage a household and have children. There's no teenage phase, no years of figuring yourself out. There's childhood, and then there's adulthood. The line between them is thin and often marked by pain. We tend to think of the medieval world as a place where everyone died young, and that's mostly true. But some lived long enough to feel their backs bend, their fingers stiffen, their hair thin to wisps, and those who did, they carried centuries of wisdom or burdens. So, what counts as old in the Middle Ages? You hit your 30s, you're middle-aged. You reach your 40s, you're respected. You make it to your 50s or beyond, you're ancient. Living into your 60s or 70s wasn't impossible. It just meant you were tough, lucky, well-fed, or unusually skilled at dodging plagues, wars, childbirth, and accidents involving livestock. There were records of people living to 80 or more, monks, nobles, even peasants, but it wasn't common enough to expect. Daily life as an elder. If you were lucky enough to live in a supportive village or family, old age might bring a lighter workload, a warm spot by the hearth, the task of minding children or spinning stories, some respect for your experience, especially if you'd survived war, famine, or plague. But if you had no family, no land, or no health, old age could be cruel. You might beg, live in the margins, rely on the charity of neighbors or the church, fade from relevance as younger, stronger hands took over. There was no pension, no retirement, just a gradual slipping into silence, wisdom or witchcraft. Elderly men were often seen as wise, especially if they'd fought in wars or served the church. Elderly women that depended, some were midwives, healers, storytellers, respected matriarchs. Others, especially those who were poor, childless, or outspoken, were accused of witchcraft. That's not just a storybook trope. By the late Middle Ages, paranoia grew, and older women with knowledge of herbs, birth, or illness were easy scapegoats when something went wrong. So your twilight years could either crown you as the village's cherished elder or make you a target. Memory as legacy. There were no photo albums, no written memoirs. Your legacy lived in the stories people told. Children might whisper, "That's the man who saw the Black Death." Or, "She remembers the old king, the one who died in battle." The past lived through elders, but only as long as people listened. And in a world that was constantly struggling to survive the present, the past often faded fast. The sun sets slowly over the village, the fields fall quiet, the hearths flicker, the chickens finally shut up. And after a long, hard day, or a long, hard life, you sit back, bones aching, and let yourself breathe. You're not a king, not a saint, not the subject of any tapestry or epic, but you lived. And in the medieval world, that alone is an accomplishment. What did it all mean? To be medieval was to endure, to live through war, plague, hunger, cold, childbirth, superstition, back-breaking labor, and keep going. It meant finding joy in a warm bowl of stew, singing with your neighbors on feast days, holding a child's hand while walking to church, watching smoke rise from your roof and thinking, "We made it another day." It was brutal, yes, but it was also deeply human. You felt everything modern people feel: love, loss, pride, fear, boredom, curiosity, faith, doubt. The tools were different. The language was older, but the emotions, the struggles, the hope, same. What you left behind, you didn't write books. You didn't build cathedrals. You probably never traveled more than 20 miles from home, but you passed on a craft, a scar, a lullaby, a recipe, a story told beside a smoky fire. You raised children who would raise children who would, eventually, raise someone who would have a smartphone and complain about traffic. You were one of the countless links in the chain of human survival, and without you, the chain breaks. The myth versus the reality. People today often romanticize your life. They imagine flower crowns and long dresses, knights and chivalry, cozy cottages, and simple wisdom. They forget rotting teeth, early graves, harsh winters, endless repetition, and the way hope had to be forged, not found. Your world wasn't magical, it was real. And that makes it more worthy of respect, not less. What never really died. The Middle Ages ended, technically, but its fingerprints are still everywhere. In the shapes of our cities, in our languages, in our superstitions, in the bones of our laws, in the songs we still sing, the food we still eat, the fears we still carry. We live differently now, safer, longer, cleaner. But some part of us still aches when the sky grows gray, when the fire gets low, when the wolves howl in the dark. Some part of us still remembers what it took to survive. So, what was a day in medieval times really like? It was hard, it was dirty, it was sacred, it was boring, it was dangerous, it was honest. It was a lifetime packed into dawn and dusk, frost and fire. And now, it's history, but not gone. Never gone.